Imagine a powerful country crossing the sea and taking control of another land, making the rules and taking the resources. This is colonialism. For centuries, European empires stretched across the globe, redrawing maps and controlling societies. Local people were often treated as less important in their own homes. Now imagine those people deciding to take back control, to govern themselves, and use their resources for their own benefit. This is decolonization, the process of breaking free from foreign rule. It's not a single event, but a long, complex journey involving protests, negotiations, and sometimes armed struggle. The tide of power that once flowed from Europe began to recede in the 20th century, revealing new, independent nations. Decolonization was messy, filled with hope and struggle as billions yearned for self-determination. It's a fundamental change in how the world is organized, a story of dozens of new countries born, especially after World War II. These nations joined the global community with their own governments and voices. This transformation didn't just change the map, it reshaped politics, economics, and our understanding of freedom. Decolonization is about courage, resilience, and the universal desire to be free. It's one of the most significant chapters in our modern world. The journey from colony to nation changed everything. Understanding decolonization is key to understanding our world today. Why did decolonization happen? For colonized people, the desire for freedom was constant. They were treated as second-class citizens, their resources taken, and their cultures suppressed. This injustice fueled a powerful demand for change and dignity. New ideas of liberty and equality, inspired by revolutions in America and France, spread to the colonies. Leaders in colonized lands used these ideas to challenge the hypocrisy of empires. The two world wars accelerated change. Colonial soldiers fought for freedom abroad, then demanded it at home. The wars left European powers weakened and unable to maintain their empires. After World War II, the rise of the United States and Soviet Union shifted global power. Both superpowers opposed old colonial systems and supported independence movements for their own interests. The creation of the United Nations gave a platform to those fighting for freedom. The UN Charter promoted self-determination, adding moral and political weight to decolonization. The world was changing, and the old order could not last. Decolonization became both a necessity and an unstoppable force. The stage was set for a new era of independent nations. India's independence is a defining moment in decolonization. For nearly 2 centuries, India was under British rule, but the dream of freedom never faded. Mohandas Gandhi led with a radical idea: non-violent resistance, or satyagraha. Indians protested peacefully, boycotted British goods, and defied unjust laws. The Salt March of 1930 became a symbol of moral resistance. Yet, the path to freedom was complicated by deep divisions, especially between Hindus and Muslims. The Muslim League, led by Muhammad Ali Jinnah, called for a separate nation for Muslims. Political debates and violence followed, worsened by British divide-and-rule tactics. In 1947, India gained independence, but the subcontinent was partitioned into India and Pakistan. Partition triggered one of the largest, most violent migrations in history. Millions crossed new borders, up to 2 million died in the chaos. India's freedom came with a deep wound, a nation divided. The story of India's independence is both triumphant and tragic. It shows the power and pain of decolonization. The legacy of partition still shapes the region today. Decolonization swept across Africa after World War II, starting in the Gold Coast. Kwame Nkrumah led the push for self-government, uniting people through strikes and rallies. In 1957, the Gold Coast became Ghana, the first sub-Saharan African colony to gain independence. Ghana's success inspired a wave of liberation across Africa. The 1960s became the Year of Africa, with 17 nations gaining independence. Leaders like Jomo Kenyatta, Julius Nyerere, and Leopold Senghor guided their countries through unique struggles. Not all transitions were peaceful. Some, like Algeria's, involved brutal wars. The Algerian National Liberation Front fought a bloody conflict against French rule, winning independence at great cost. South Africa's struggle was against apartheid, a system of racial segregation. The African National Congress, led by Nelson Mandela, resisted for decades. Mandela spent 27 years in prison before apartheid finally ended. In 1994, Mandela became South Africa's first black president. Africa's decolonization was a story of hope, struggle, and resilience. The continent's journey was marked by both triumph and tragedy. The legacy of these struggles continues to shape Africa today. Decolonization in Southeast Asia was shaped by nationalism, war, and Cold War politics. In Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh led the fight against French colonial rule. After World War II, the Viet Minh declared independence, sparking the First Indochina War. The Vietnamese victory at Dien Bien Phu forced the French to withdraw. Vietnam was divided into Communist North and anti-Communist South, setting the stage for the Vietnam War. The struggle for independence was long and painful. In Indonesia, Sukarno led the nationalist movement against Dutch rule. The Japanese occupation during World War II weakened Dutch control. After the war, Sukarno declared independence, leading to a 4-year conflict. International pressure, especially from the US, pushed the Dutch to recognize Indonesia's independence in 1949. Sukarno became the first president, uniting thousands of islands under one nation. Both Vietnam and Indonesia's stories show the complexity and cost of decolonization. Their journeys reshaped Southeast Asia. Decolonization didn't just change borders, it transformed the world order. In 1945, the United Nations had 51 members. Today it has nearly 200, mostly former colonies. This shift gave new nations a voice in global affairs. Many shared common challenges and formed alliances like the non-aligned movement. Leaders such as Nehru, Sukarno, and Nasser sought a path independent of the US and Soviet Union. Decolonization broke the old economic system, but new nations struggled with poverty and dependence. Former colonial powers had to redefine their roles in a changed world. The legacy of decolonization shapes today's international relationships and economic realities. The rise of new powers, ongoing instability, and debates about inequality all trace back to this era. Understanding decolonization is essential to understanding our interconnected world. It's the foundation of today's global landscape. The echoes of this transformation are everywhere. Decolonization was also a cultural awakening. It meant reclaiming identities, histories, and traditions suppressed by colonial rule. Colonized people were taught their cultures were inferior. Decolonization challenged this narrative. A cultural renaissance followed. Writers, artists, and thinkers celebrated their own stories. Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart gave voice to African perspectives, inspiring post-colonial literature. Historians began to rewrite their own histories, highlighting resistance and pre-colonial achievements. This cultural shift built national pride and a shared sense of identity. Decolonization is an ongoing process, questioning imposed standards and reviving indigenous languages. Movements to repatriate stolen artifacts and reform education reflect this journey. It's about decolonizing minds and valuing diverse ways of knowing. The cultural renaissance continues to shape societies today. Decolonization is as much about identity as it is about politics. The journey toward self-definition is ongoing. The effects of decolonization are still deeply felt. Many new nations inherited borders drawn by colonial powers, often causing conflict and instability. Economically, former colonies remained dependent on global markets and their old rulers. This is sometimes called neo-colonialism, political independence but economic control from outside. Social hierarchies and tensions created by colonial favoritism persist today. The psychological impact of colonialism lingers, shaping identities and power structures. The work of mental and cultural decolonization is ongoing. Relationships between former colonies and colonial powers remain complex. Debates about aid, debt, immigration, and reparations are part of this legacy. Migration from former colonies to Europe is a direct result of shared history. Decolonization is not just history, it's the root of many global issues today. Understanding this journey helps us make sense of the present. The story of decolonization is far from over. Decolonization reshaped our world, giving birth to new nations and new voices. The desire for dignity and freedom drove people from India to Ghana to Vietnam to reclaim their sovereignty. Visionary leaders used both nonviolent protest and armed struggle to win independence. This was more than a political shift, it reordered the planet. Decolonization redrew the map, transformed the United Nations, and sparked a cultural renaissance. But it also left challenges: artificial borders, economic dependency, and lasting psychological scars. The journey to true independence and prosperity continues. Why does this story matter today? Because our world was forged in this struggle. Wealth, conflict, diversity, and debates about justice all connect to this history. Decolonization teaches us about the universal desire for freedom and the power to change. It's not just about the end of empires, it's about building a more just world. The story of decolonization is still being written by all of us.